Darkness arrives faster than memory. The sun slips below the horizon, and with it vanishes the only thing standing between life and terror. There is no glowing ember waiting to be coaxed back to life, no circle of warmth, no flickering light to draw faces together. When night falls in this world, it falls completely like a door slamming shut on safety itself. For early humans without fire, night is not a pause in the day. It is an active threat. The temperature drops sharply, stealing heat from exposed skin, stiffening fingers, slowing movement. Muscles tighten, breath turns shallow. The body begins a quiet calculation. It cannot win. How long before cold overwhelms flesh? Every calorie matters now, because none were spent cooking food into something richer, softer, easier to digest. Hunger is not an ache, it is a constant background hum, competing with fear for dominance. And fear always wins at night. Eyes strain against the darkness, but darkness does not give itself up easily. Shapes move at the edges of perception, real or imagined. It makes no difference. In this world, imagination can kill you just as efficiently as a predator. A rustle in the grass could be wind, or a lion adjusting its weight before the charge. Without fire, there is no perimeter, no boundary between us and them. The night belongs to everything else. Early humans huddle close, not for comfort, but for survival. Bodies press together to conserve heat, sharing what little warmth they have. Infants are held tightly, muffled against chests, because a single cry can become a death sentence. Sound travels far in the dark, too far. Above them, the sky stretches endlessly, unfamiliar and hostile. Stars burn cold and distant, offering no guidance, no warmth, no meaning. In our world, fire would mirror those stars, bringing the heavens down to earth. Here, the sky remains untouchable, another reminder of how small, how vulnerable humans truly are. Sleep becomes fractured, dangerous. No one rests deeply. Someone is always half awake, listening, waiting. Because without fire, there is no true safety, only temporary survival. And survival is brutally selective. Predators do not fear humans in this world. Why would they? Humans are slow, fragile, and exposed. They do not carry light. They do not command heat. They smell like meat. Big cats learn quickly that these upright creatures panic in the dark, scatter easily, and leave their young unprotected. Hyenas test the edges of human groups, probing for weakness. Leopards strike from above. Snakes coil silently beneath unseen rocks. Fire, in our timeline, created fear in animals long before it created civilization. Here, that fear never exists. Humans are just another prey species, clever, yes, but not dominant. Each night becomes a numbers game. Who survives until dawn? Who doesn't? And dawn, when it finally comes, brings no relief, only exhaustion. Red eyes squint into the rising sun. Bodies ache from tension held too long. Limbs are stiff with cold. The living take inventory of the dead, and the dead are never few. A missing child, a wounded elder, someone dragged away in the night, leaving behind only disturbed earth and silence. There is no time to mourn properly. Grief is a luxury. The sun is already climbing, and with it comes heat, thirst, and the relentless demand to move. Humans without fire cannot stay in one place for long. They cannot clear land, cannot defend territory, cannot establish dominance over a space. They follow food, water, and seasonal patterns, like shadows chasing light. This constant movement shapes everything. Without fire, humans are trapped in narrow ecological zones. Cold regions are death sentences. High altitudes are impossible. Winters are catastrophic. Migration routes shrink, confined to places where the sun does most of the work fire never could. The tropics become both refuge and prison, warm enough to survive, but dense with predators and disease. And even there, the night still wins. The darkness shapes behavior in subtle, terrifying ways. Humans learn to fear sunset the way we fear storms or earthquakes. Children grow up knowing that every day has a deadline. There is no late work, no lingering conversations, no quiet reflection after dark. As the sun dips low, urgency grips the group. Find shelter, find cover, find each other. Shelter, however, is a generous word. Without fire, caves are not sanctuaries, they are risks. Darkness inside darkness. Predators claim caves too, and without smoke to flush them out, humans must choose between exposure outside or potential death within. Most nights are spent in the open, under branches, against rocks, anywhere that offers even a slight advantage. But nothing truly protects them. Rain turns nights into slow torture. Wet skin loses heat rapidly. Shivering burns precious energy. Hypothermia creeps in silently, numbing fingers, clouding thought. People don't scream when they succumb, they simply stop responding. By morning, they are still. Children born into this world learn early that survival is not guaranteed. Childhood itself is shortened, compressed by necessity. There is no time for play after dark, no stories whispered by firelight, no safe space to imagine a future beyond tomorrow. Learning is purely practical: where to hide, when to run, how to stay quiet. And yet, something remarkable still flickers, not fire, but resilience. Humans adapt. They become hyper-aware of their environment. They memorize the rhythms of predators, the timing of moonlight, the subtle cues that signal danger. On brighter nights, when the moon offers a faint silver glow, movement becomes slightly safer. On moonless nights, they barely breathe. Eyes adjust, ears sharpen, smell becomes a warning system. Survival favors those who sense the world more deeply, because there is no tool to compensate for weakness, no flame to even the odds. But adaptation has limits. As generations pass, the psychological toll accumulates. Living without fire means living without control over the most basic forces of nature. Cold is not something to overcome, it is something to endure. Darkness is not something to banish, it is something to submit to. This breeds a mindset not of mastery, but of caution, of endurance, of humility edged with fear. The night teaches humans that the world does not belong to them. And that lesson sinks deep. Without fire, there is no gathering after dark, no shared focus, no glowing center pulling people together. Groups fragment. Bonds are weaker, formed in daylight and tested brutally at night. Trust becomes practical, not emotional. You stay close to those who help you survive, not those who make you feel safe. Safety, in this world, is an illusion. Yet somewhere within this endless cycle of day and night, survival and loss, a question begins to form, not consciously, not in words, but as a feeling, a tension, a sense that something is missing, that the night should not be this powerful, that humans should not be this small. But without fire, that feeling has nowhere to go. There is no spark to answer it. And so the night continues, unchallenged, undefeated, stretching endlessly into the future, a future where darkness is not the absence of light, but the ruler of life itself. And as the sun rises once more, casting long shadows across exhausted faces, one truth becomes painfully clear. Before humanity ever built civilizations, before it dreamed of gods or stars or progress, it first had to defeat the night. In this world, it never does. And that failure will change everything that comes next. Evolution is patient, but it is not generous. It does not reward ambition. It rewards efficiency. And in a world without fire, efficiency becomes a brutal ceiling, one the human body can never break through. Every morning begins the same way: hunger. Not the sharp, sudden hunger of a missed meal, but the deep, grinding hunger of a body that never quite gets enough. Food is eaten raw. Roots are chewed endlessly to extract what little energy they offer. Meat, when it can be scavenged or hunted, is tough, sinewy, dangerous to eat. Parasites thrive. Bacteria go unchallenged. Every bite is a gamble. Fire, in our world, unlocked calories hidden behind cell walls, transformed poison into nourishment, turned chewing from a battle into a process. In this world, none of that happens. The human digestive system must do all the work itself, and it cannot keep up. Calories dictate evolution more than ideas ever could. Without cooked food, the energy budget of the human body is permanently constrained. There is never surplus, only just enough. And when energy is limited, the body must choose where to spend it. Big brains are expensive. In our timeline, fire fed the brain. Cooked food allowed shorter intestines, freeing energy for neural growth. Here, the opposite occurs. Guts remain long and demanding. Jaws stay heavy and powerful. Teeth grow larger, reinforced to handle endless grinding of raw plants and fibrous meat. Faces project forward. Skulls thicken. The anatomy whispers a quiet truth. Intelligence is being sacrificed for survival. Generation after generation, the human brain stalls. Not shrinking dramatically, but never expanding. Never reorganizing into something capable of abstract leaps. Memory remains immediate. Planning stretches hours, maybe days, but rarely beyond. Long-term strategy is a luxury reserved for species that can afford to think instead of chew. Infants are born helpless, as in our world, but now their vulnerability carries a harsher cost. Breastfeeding lasts longer because alternative foods are dangerous. Weaning is delayed. Child mortality is relentless. Many never survive their first nights. Those who do grow slowly, bodies prioritizing strength and endurance over cognitive development. This changes what adulthood looks like. Humans in this world are physically resilient in specific ways. They are lean, wiry, capable of walking immense distances under the sun. Their pain tolerance is high, not because they are heroic, but because pain is constant. Minor injuries heal slowly, major ones often don't. A broken limb can be a death sentence without fire to cauterize wounds or sterilize tools. There is no medicine, only endurance. And then there is cold. Without fire, cold does not just kill quickly, it shapes bodies over millennia. Humans who stray too far from warmth die before reproducing. Those who survive remain clustered in warmer regions, their physiology adapting just enough to endure nights that still cut deep. Body hair remains slightly thicker than in our timeline, but never enough to replace fire's warmth. Fat distribution shifts modestly, offering insulation but costing mobility. It is always a compromise, always a trade-off. And nowhere is that compromise more evident than in the brain. Without caloric abundance, there is no room for redundancy. Neural networks remain efficient but limited. Creativity, true creativity, the kind that imagines something never seen before, struggles to emerge. Innovation becomes incremental, reactive. Humans respond to immediate challenges but rarely invent solutions that reshape their environment. Because invention requires time, and time requires safety. Fire gave us both. Here, both are absent. Faces in this world look familiar yet unsettling. Eyes are alert, always scanning. Brows are heavy. Expressions are restrained. Emotional displays are muted not because humans lack feeling, but because vulnerability is dangerous. Loud laughter attracts attention. Deep sleep invites death. Emotional restraint becomes a survival trait. Social bonds form, but they are thinner, more fragile. Without surplus energy, there is little room for those who cannot contribute. Elders are respected for knowledge, but once they slow too much, they become liabilities. Compassion exists, but it is rationed like food. The body becomes a record of this harsh arithmetic. Hands remain dexterous but limited. Fine motor skills exist, but without hardened tools or precision instruments, they never evolve toward craftsmanship. There is no pottery shaping fingers. No weaving looms, refining coordination. Fingers grip, tear, dig, carry. They do not sculpt. And yet, humans persist. They persist because evolution does not require greatness, only adequacy. This version of humanity is adequate at surviving just long enough to reproduce, just long enough to continue, not thriving, not progressing, enduring. But endurance has consequences. Without fire, there is no rapid evolutionary acceleration, no feedback loop between culture and biology. In our world, technology reshaped selection pressures. Here, biology is left mostly alone, inching forward at a glacial pace. 100,000 years pass, and the human body looks much the same, another 100,000, and still familiar. Bodies that never changed because the environment never allowed them to. And something else quietly disappears, the possibility of divergence. In our timeline, fire allowed humans to spread across continents, encounter new climates, adapt into diverse populations. Here, humanity remains bottled up, geographically and biologically. Variation is limited. Evolution stagnates. The species becomes stable, and stability in evolution is often the prelude to extinction. Because when the environment shifts, and it always does, a species without flexibility is vulnerable. Climate changes, droughts deepen, ice ages loom at the edges of habitable zones. Without fire, humans cannot adapt quickly enough. Their bodies are tuned to a narrow band of conditions. They are specialists in survival without control. As the centuries grind forward, the human form remains locked in this compromise, strong enough to survive, not strong enough to transform. Intelligent enough to sense what is missing, not intelligent enough to reach for it. And somewhere, deep within these unchanging bodies, the absence of fire leaves a silent imprint. A potential that never awakens. A future that never arrives. Because before humanity could change the world, it first had to change itself. And without fire, the body never learns how. Delta. It is memory made physical. In our world, the idea of home is inseparable from fire, the hearth, the gathering place, the center of warmth and light. But in a world without flame, the concept never fully forms. There is no anchor to return to, no place shaped and reshaped by human hands until it becomes familiar. There is only where you are and where you must go next. Humans in this world are not settlers. They are passers-by. Every morning, movement resumes almost immediately. The landscape dictates the day, not intention. Where food grows, people follow. Where water lingers, they pause briefly. And when resources thin, they leave without ceremony. Nothing ties them to the land strongly enough to stay. Without fire, permanence is dangerous. Staying in one place means drawing attention. Predators learn patterns. Parasites accumulate. Waste builds. Without heat to cleanse, smoke to repel, or tools to alter terrain, lingering becomes lethal. The safest strategy is motion. Constant, quiet, exhausting motion. And so the world remains unmarked by human ambition. Trees are not cleared. Brush is not burned back. Paths fade as quickly as they are made. No fields appear. No structures rise. Humans do not reshape the land, they pass through it like weather. Shelter, when it exists, is temporary and fragile. Lean-toss made of branches, natural rock overhangs, thickets that hide scent and silhouette. Caves are used sparingly, feared as much as they are sought. Without fire, a cave can be a trap, a place where predators already sleep, where darkness is absolute, where escape routes vanish. There is no way to claim a space and make it safe. In our timeline, fire turned wilderness into territory. It allowed humans to say, "This place is ours." Here, ownership never emerges. The land belongs to itself. This has profound consequences for how humans think. Without fixed places, there is no architecture of memory, no childhood home to return to, no ancestral site to protect. Stories are not tied to locations, because locations do not last. Meaning drifts, unanchored, passing from mouth to mouth, without ever settling into stone or soil. Generations grow up without knowing the graves of their ancestors. The dead are left where they fall, or quietly covered, then abandoned as the group moves on. There are no cemeteries, no sacred ground, no sense that the past occupies space. Time becomes fluid, place becomes irrelevant. And without place, identity weakens. Groups remain small, because large numbers require stability, coordination, storage. Without fire, food cannot be preserved. Meat rots quickly. Plants spoil. Surplus is impossible. What you gather today must be eaten today. Tomorrow is tomorrow's problem. This enforces a harsh ceiling on social complexity. Families form, dissolve, reform. Bonds are strong but narrow. Loyalty is practical, not ideological. There is no tribe in the symbolic sense, only clusters of individuals moving together, because separation is more dangerous than proximity. Leadership is situational. The best tracker leads the hunt. The strongest adult controls disputes. The most experienced navigator decides when to move. Authority is temporary, fluid, rarely challenged, because survival leaves little energy for power struggles. Without permanent homes, hierarchy never hardens. And without hierarchy, there are no cities waiting to be born. Fire, in our world, allowed humans to settle long enough to invest in infrastructure walls, storage pits, eventually houses. Here, even the idea of building something meant to last feels foreign. Why build when you cannot defend? Why invest when you cannot stay? Tools reflect this mindset. They are simple, quickly made, quickly discarded, sharpened stones, wooden spears hardened only by time, not flame. There is no reason to refine them beyond immediate usefulness. Craftsmanship requires repetition in place. It requires mistakes, experimentation, and the confidence that tomorrow you'll still be here to try again. That confidence never exists. Children grow up learning not where they are from, but how to leave. They memorize routes, not landmarks. Water sources, not settlements. The world becomes a map of dangers and opportunities, not of belonging. And slowly, subtly, the human relationship with land shifts into something almost reverent, not because humans dominate it, but because it dominates them. They learn the moods of terrain, which valleys flood, which plains burn under the sun, which forests swallow sound. Knowledge is passed carefully, because mistakes are fatal. But this knowledge is always about adaptation, never transformation. Humans learn to live within the world, not above it. This sounds peaceful, balanced, but balance comes at a cost. Without homes, there is no accumulation of culture, no art that survives beyond a day, no symbols carved into walls, no objects passed down as heirlooms. Everything meaningful exists only as long as memory holds it, and memory is fragile under hunger and fear. When an elder dies, entire libraries vanish. Fire would have extended memory, baked clay, hardened tools, preserved pigments. Here, nothing lasts. Humanity becomes an oral species with nothing stable to speak about. Even language reflects this impermanence. Words for journey, path, and danger multiply. Words for home, ownership, and future remain vague, underdeveloped. Grammar prioritizes immediacy. The present dominates. The distant future feels unreal. Because in a world without homes, the future is always elsewhere. And yet, movement itself becomes a kind of identity. Humans develop an intimate relationship with seasons. They sense subtle changes in wind, in animal behavior, in plant cycles. They know when to move not by calendars, but by smell, by temperature shifts, by the quiet absence of certain birds. This knowledge is deep, embodied, and constantly reinforced. But it never leads to settlement, because settlement requires trust in tomorrow. As millennia pass, the human footprint remains faint. From a distance, from the perspective of the planet itself, humanity barely registers. No scars on the land, no smoke rising from hearths, no clearings spreading outward. Earth remains largely untouched, vast, and indifferent. And that indifference is the final barrier. Because without a home, humans never develop the illusion that the world can be shaped to their will. They adapt endlessly, but they do not aspire. They survive, but they do not build. And somewhere, deep within the species, a potential remains dormant. Fire would have been the seed of permanence, the first reason to stay. Without it, humanity keeps walking, always forward, never rooted, never home. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the absence of reflection. In our world, the human mind learned to unfold itself in the glow of firelight. Nights stretched longer, safer. Shadows danced on cave walls. Stories were told, retold, refined. Memory gained rhythm. Imagination found a stage. In this other world, night offers none of that. When darkness falls, humans do not sit and think. They wait, they listen, they endure. The mind narrows, collapsing inward, focusing only on survival. Every sense is aimed outward, scanning for danger. There is no space left for abstraction. And over generations, that space never develops. Language still exists, but it evolves differently. Words cluster tightly around the immediate world. Food, threat, movement, pain. Vocabulary grows dense in practical directions and thin everywhere else. There are many ways to warn, to signal, to command silence. Far fewer ways to speculate, to wonder, to imagine something unseen. Fire, in our timeline, created time after sunset. Here, night steals it. Conversation becomes brief, functional, whispered when necessary. There is no communal pause at the end of the day, no shared mental unwinding. Thought remains tethered to the present moment, because drifting, even mentally, can be fatal. The brain adapts to this constraint. Neural pathways prioritize perception and reaction over contemplation. Humans become extraordinarily good at reading subtle cues: a bent blade of grass, a shift in wind direction, the tension in another's posture. Emotional intelligence is immediate and intuitive, but it lacks depth. Feelings are sensed, not explored. There is little room for introspection. Children grow up learning through observation and imitation, not explanation. There are no long stories to encode lessons, no myths to compress generations of experience into narrative form. Knowledge is fragmented, situational, tied to specific contexts. If those contexts disappear, so does the knowledge. Fire would have anchored memory. Without it, memory drifts. This has profound consequences for imagination. Imagination is not fantasy, it is rehearsal. It allows a mind to simulate futures, to test ideas without risking the body. But imagination requires safety. It requires moments where nothing is demanded of you. Those moments never come. Without fire, humans do not stare into flames and see shapes, faces, gods. They stare into darkness and see only what might kill them. The mind learns to suppress speculation, because speculation distracts. Over time, curiosity becomes muted, not eliminated, but dulled. Wonder is dangerous when survival is uncertain. Even dreams change. Sleep, when it happens, is shallow and broken. Dreams are brief, chaotic, often indistinguishable from waking fear. There is no ritualized transition into rest, no calming glow to signal safety. The brain remains half alert, guarding the body even in unconsciousness. Over generations, this alters emotional architecture. Anxiety becomes baseline, calm becomes rare. Joy exists, but it is sharp and fleeting laughter during daylight, a successful hunt, a safe crossing. It does not linger into night. And without lingering emotions, reflection cannot take root. In our world, fire became a focal point. It synchronized attention. Everyone looked toward the same thing, listened to the same voice, absorbed the same story. This collective focus shaped shared realities, beliefs, values, identity. Here, attention is scattered. Groups do not gather mentally, even when they gather physically. Everyone listens outward, not inward. The mind is always on patrol. There is no shared silence, no collective stillness in which ideas might bloom. As a result, symbolic thinking struggles to emerge. Symbols require detachment from immediate reality, a mark standing for something else, a sound meaning more than itself. Without time and safety, symbols feel unnecessary, even confusing. Communication remains concrete, literal, anchored to the visible world. There are no drawings on cave walls, not because humans lack creativity, but because lingering in a dark, enclosed space without fire is reckless. There are no musical traditions shaped by nighttime gatherings, because sound carries too far in the dark. There are no elaborate rituals, because rituals require repetition in the same place. Culture cannot crystallize. And so the mind remains practical, efficient, constrained. This does not mean humans are unintelligent. On the contrary, they are exquisitely tuned to their environment. They remember roots with astonishing accuracy. They read animal behavior like a language. They sense danger before it announces itself. But their intelligence is narrow. They do not ask why storms come. They ask where to shelter. They do not imagine future generations ahead. They think about the next migration, the next meal, the next night. Fire would have expanded the mental horizon. Without it, the horizon stays close. One of the most profound losses is the absence of shared narrative. Stories are not entertainment, they are cognitive scaffolding. They allow knowledge to survive individual lifespans. They bind groups together across time. Without long-form storytelling, each generation must relearn too much from scratch. Elders pass on wisdom, but only in fragments, during brief, safe moments. There is no grand mythology explaining the world, no origin stories, no heroes whose lives compress values into memory. Meaning remains local, personal, fleeting. And when meaning is fleeting, ambition fades. Humans in this world do not imagine transforming their circumstances. They adapt, adjust, endure. The idea that the world could be different, that humans could change the rules, never fully forms. Because the mind has never experienced mastery over the night. Fire, in our timeline, was the first proof that humans could defy nature. That darkness could be pushed back, that cold could be overcome, that fear was not absolute. Here, fear remains undefeated. And that shapes consciousness at its deepest level. The human mind becomes quiet, not peaceful, but restrained. Thought is efficient, not expansive. Curiosity flickers but rarely ignites. The future is not envisioned, it is awaited. And so, across thousands of years, something tragic settles in. Not stupidity, not ignorance, but a silence where imagination might have lived. a silence born not of emptiness, but of constant vigilance. Because before humanity could ask big questions about gods, about destiny, about the stars, it first needed the safety to sit still and wonder. And in a world without fire, the mind never truly gets the chance. Fire is transformation made visible. It takes what exists and turns it into something new, softens, hardens, purifies, reshapes. In our world, that visible transformation taught humans a dangerous, intoxicating idea that matter itself could be changed, and therefore so could fate. In this world, that lesson is never learned. Stone remains stone, flesh remains flesh, pain remains pain. Without fire, humanity never crosses the invisible threshold between using the world and transforming it. Tools exist, but they are limited to what nature already provides. Stone can be struck, wood can be sharpened, bone can be scraped, but nothing can be reforged. Nothing can be purified. Nothing can be improved beyond its natural state. Metal lies everywhere beneath human feet, and might as well not exist. Copper veins glint uselessly in exposed rock. Iron-rich stones rust quietly in the rain. Gold sleeps in riverbeds, unnoticed. Without fire hot enough to melt, shape, and harden, metal remains an untouchable promise. There are no blades sharper than stone, no armor stronger than hide, no nails, no hinges, no wheels. Technology freezes at the edge of possibility, and with that freeze comes vulnerability. Stone tools break, wooden weapons splinter. Injuries are common, and without advanced tools they are catastrophic. A deep cut festers. A fractured bone heals crooked, if at all. Infection spreads unchecked. There is no way to boil water, no way to sterilize wounds, no way to cauterize bleeding. Medicine, as we understand it, cannot exist. Healing becomes a matter of luck and time. Some plants soothe pain, some leaves slow bleeding. Knowledge of these remedies passes on imperfectly, but without boiling, distillation, or controlled dosages, effectiveness is limited. Trial and error costs lives. Survival favors those who avoid injury altogether. This reality reshapes behavior. Risk is minimized. Innovation is conservative. No one experiments recklessly when failure means death. Boldness fades, replaced by caution. Progress slows to a crawl. And then there is death. Death is constant, visible, and deeply personal. Without medicine, mortality rates remain high across all ages. Children die often. Adults die young. Elders are rare. The human lifespan is brutally compressed. Yet despite death's presence, there are no funerary rites as we know them. No cremation, no preserved remains. Bodies return quickly to the earth or are taken by animals. Death leaves little physical trace. This absence has consequences for belief. In our world, fire shaped spirituality. Flames mesmerized, frightened, inspired. Smoke rose upward, carrying offerings into the sky. Fire transformed bodies into ash, suggesting continuation beyond flesh. It became a bridge between the visible and invisible. Here, no such bridge exists. The world feels immediate, literal, grounded. The sun is warm, the night is dangerous, animals are deadly. There is little mystery that invites symbolic interpretation. When someone dies, they are simply gone, returned to the same environment that consumes everything else. This does not mean humans lack spirituality entirely, but it remains diffuse, undeveloped. There are no gods of fire, no sacred hearths, no temples built around eternal flames. There is no sense of humans communing with higher forces through ritualized transformation. Belief, like culture, remains fragmented. People may fear the sky, respect the land, sense patterns beyond their control, but these feelings do not crystallize into organized religion. There are no priesthoods, no doctrines, no shared cosmologies spanning generations. Fire, in our timeline, unified belief. Without it, belief never coheres. And without coherent belief, there is no moral infrastructure beyond immediate survival. Ethics remain practical. Help those who help you. Protect those who strengthen the group. Abstract moral principles, justice, sacrifice for unseen futures, universal rules struggle to form. The absence of metal deepens this stagnation. Without metal tools, there is no agriculture, no plows to turn soil, no sickles to harvest efficiently, no storage vessels to protect surplus. Farming remains impossible at scale. Humans remain hunter-gatherers not by choice, but by technological ceiling. Without agriculture, there are no population explosions. Without population density, there are no cities. Without cities, there is no specialization. Everyone must contribute directly to survival. There are no full-time healers, no artisans, no philosophers. Society remains flat. And in a flat society, medicine cannot advance. Knowledge that requires accumulation, refinement, and long-term experimentation never takes root. Each generation rediscovers the same fragile remedies. There is no laboratory, no controlled environment, no written record. Even if someone stumbles upon a breakthrough, it dies with them. Fire would have preserved it. Without fire, it vanishes. Pain becomes a defining feature of human existence. Childbirth is perilous. Infections claim mothers and infants alike. Broken teeth cause slow starvation. Parasites weaken bodies already pushed to the edge. There is no anesthesia, no surgery beyond crude cutting that often kills more than it saves. And yet, humans endure. They endure because endurance is all they know. But endurance is not progress. Over time, something subtle happens to the human relationship with suffering. Pain is normalized. Death is expected. Hope is narrowed to the immediate. Survive the night, heal enough to walk, find food tomorrow. There is no dream of conquering disease, no belief that illness can be defeated. Sickness is part of the world, like rain or drought. This worldview is not nihilistic, it is resigned. Fire, in our world, sparked defiance. It whispered that nature could be bent, that limits could be challenged. Here, nature remains unquestioned authority. And so gods never rise to challenge it. No Prometheus stealing flame, no divine forges, no hellfire, no purifying blaze. Without fire, even the metaphors of transcendence are missing. Humanity lives entirely within the material world, unable to reshape it, unable to imagine escaping it. Stone stays stone. Flesh stays fragile. Pain stays permanent. And as the ages roll on, the cost of this stagnation becomes clearer. Because a species that cannot transform its world can only endure it. And endurance has a breaking point. From a distance from high above the clouds, Earth looks untouched. Forests stretch unbroken from horizon to horizon. Rivers carve their ancient paths without diversion. Grasslands rise and fall with the seasons, unscarred by fields or fences. There are no glowing cities at night, no scars of smoke drifting into the sky, no rhythmic pulse of human industry. The planet breathes freely. Because in this world, humanity never learns how to conquer it. Without fire, humans remain a minor presence in Earth's vast systems. They do not bend landscapes to their will. They move through them cautiously, temporarily, like any other animal. The great transformation of the planet, the reshaping of ecosystems, the redrawing of coastlines, the rewriting of evolutionary paths never happens. Earth remains dominant. This changes everything, not just for humans, but for life itself. Without fire-driven expansion, humans never spread far. Ice-covered regions remain empty of human footsteps. Mountain ranges stay unconquered. Deserts are crossed only at their edges, briefly, under extreme risk. Oceans remain impassable barriers, not highways. There are no boats hardened with pitch, no sails sewn from treated fibers, no night navigation by firelight. Continents remain isolated, and so do their species. Megafauna survive. Giant herbivores roam without fear of coordinated human hunting. Apex predators maintain their dominance, shaping ecosystems as they always have. There are no mass extinctions triggered by human expansion, no sudden disappearances written into the fossil record. Evolution continues on its own terms. In our world, fire allowed humans to become an ecological force, a keystone species whose actions rippled outward, collapsing and rebuilding entire systems. Here, that role never materializes. Humans are not engineers of environments, they are participants. The balance of nature remains brutal, but intact. This has subtle consequences. Plants that would have been domesticated remain wild. Grasses never evolve into crops shaped by human preference. Wolves are never tamed. Animals do not learn to fear human presence, because humans never become predictably dangerous. When humans enter an area, animals respond as they would to any other predator, with caution, curiosity, sometimes aggression. There is no instinctive terror, no evolutionary memory of fire-wielding apes who kill from a distance. Humans are not special. They are fragile omnivores, competing for space in ecosystems that do not revolve around them. Without agriculture, there is no population boom. Human numbers remain low, scattered, constantly checked by famine, disease, and predation. This low density prevents large-scale environmental impact. Forests regenerate naturally. Rivers run clean. Atmospheric composition remains stable. The climate follows its long natural rhythms. Ice ages come and go without interference. Glaciers advance, forcing humans to retreat or perish. Interglacial periods bring temporary abundance, brief expansions, then contraction again. Humanity rides these cycles like driftwood on a tide, never steering. Fire, in our timeline, gave humans insulation against climate. It allowed them to survive winters, adapt to cold, and store energy. Here, climate remains judge and executioner. This creates a world where geography is destiny. Certain regions, warm, resource-rich, relatively stable, become recurring refuges. Humans drift back to them over and over, separated by generations, unknowingly retracing ancestral paths. Other regions remain untouched for hundreds of thousands of years, waiting for a species that will never arrive. Earth's diversity flourishes in this absence. Coral reefs grow undisturbed. Wetlands expand and contract naturally. Large predators maintain healthy populations. The intricate dance between species continues without a dominant disruptor. From the planet's perspective, this is not a tragedy. It is equilibrium. But equilibrium is indifferent to human ambition. As millennia pass, humans do not accumulate power, they accumulate vulnerability. Each environmental shift threatens extinction. A prolonged drought can erase entire populations. A new predator adapting slightly faster can tip the balance. A disease crossing from animals can spread unchecked through small, mobile groups. There is no buffer. Fire would have been that buffer, the first step toward control. Without it, humanity never crosses the threshold from ecological participant to planetary force. And yet, there is a haunting irony. Because the planet, left unconquered, remains beautiful. The skies are darker at night, filled with stars, unobscured by smoke or light. The air is clean. The rhythms of life are ancient and uninterrupted. In many ways, this world is healthier than ours. But it is not a world built for humans. Humans remain guests, temporary, replaceable. If humanity were to vanish entirely, Earth would barely notice. Forests would close over abandoned paths in weeks. Predators would adjust. Rivers would continue to flow. The planet has no memory of human dominance, because there was none. This reality, reshapes the meaning of survival. In our world, survival became about progress, expanding, improving, conquering. Here, survival is about fitting in just well enough to avoid being erased. There is no Anthropocene, no age defined by humans. Geological layers tell no story of fire-hardened cities or metal bones buried in sediment. Future intelligences, if they ever arise, will not find traces of human supremacy. They may not find humans at all. And that brings an uncomfortable question to the surface. Is this world better? It is balanced. It is rich. It is alive in ways our world has lost. But it is also merciless. It offers no forgiveness, no second chances. It does not care whether humans dream of more, because dreams require leverage. Fire was leverage. Without it, humanity never lifts itself high enough to leave a mark. And as the planet continues its slow, indifferent journey through time, the fate of this fireless species hangs on a fragile thread, one climate shift, one evolutionary misstep away from disappearing entirely. The Earth would endure. The question is whether humans would. Humanity is not alone. Not because it dominates, but because it never does. Other human species walk the Earth beside Homo sapiens, just as they once did in our own deep past, but here, the balance between them never tips. Neanderthals roam colder edges of the habitable world. Denisovans occupy rugged highlands. Other hominins, whose names never survive because no one ever writes them down, adapt quietly to niches carved by climate and chance. And without fire, none of them gain a decisive edge. In our timeline, fire was the great separator. It allowed Homo sapiens to cook more efficiently, think more expansively, coordinate more flexibly, and spread farther than any rival. Here, that advantage never materializes. All human species remain trapped by the same constraints: raw food, cold nights, fragile tools, narrow ecological tolerance. Evolution becomes a stalemate. Homo sapiens is not smarter in any meaningful way. Neanderthals are not outcompeted. Denisovans do not fade into genetic echoes. Each species survives where it can, adapting locally, overlapping occasionally, then drifting apart again. Encounters between them are rare, cautious, tense. Without fire to signal presence or create neutral gathering spaces, meetings happen by accident at water sources, migration bottlenecks, shared hunting grounds. These moments are dangerous. Misunderstandings escalate quickly. Communication is limited. Trust is fragile. Sometimes they fight. Sometimes they flee. Sometimes they interbreed. But no species ever unifies the others. There is no dominant lineage, no singular human story unfolding across the planet. Instead, there are parallel existences, separate threads running through time, vulnerable to the same forces, unaware of their shared potential. And then the climate shifts. It always does. Ice advances, temperatures drop, habitable zones shrink. In our world, fire allowed humans to push back, to move into colder regions, to survive winters, to adapt culturally faster than biology alone could manage. Here, adaptation is slow, genetic, and often too late. Populations fragment. Small groups become isolated by advancing glaciers, rising seas, expanding deserts. Gene flow slows, knowledge pools shrink, each pocket of humanity becomes a fragile experiment in endurance. Some fail quietly. A drought lasts one season too long. A prey species migrates unexpectedly. A disease spreads unchecked. Entire lineages vanish without record, without legacy. No one marks their passing. The earth absorbs them without pause. Others cling on, barely. Neanderthals, robust and cold-adapted, hold their ground for a time. But without fire, even their stocky bodies cannot survive prolonged cold. They retreat south, competing directly with sapiens for dwindling resources. Conflict increases, cooperation remains rare. Denisovans, adapted to altitude, face similar limits. Cold nights at elevation become lethal. They descend, losing the advantage that once defined them. The world grows smaller. As habitable zones compress, competition intensifies not just between species, but within them. Groups splinter, loyalties fracture, survival becomes zero-sum. There is no surplus to share, no technology to soften loss. Extinction stops being dramatic. It becomes ordinary. And Homo sapiens, for all its latent potential, is not immune. Without fire, sapiens never spreads widely enough to buffer against catastrophe. There is no redundancy of populations across continents, no deep reservoirs of numbers. A single prolonged climatic downturn can erase entire branches of the species. In some regions, sapiens disappears entirely, replaced by other hominins better suited to local conditions. In others, sapiens survives, but only as one human species among many, not the inheritor of the planet. The idea that we were destined to rule the earth collapses here. Destiny requires leverage. Fire was leverage. Without it, evolution has no reason to favor Homo sapiens over its cousins. Intelligence plateaus. Cooperation remains limited. Culture never compounds. There is no runaway advantage, no tipping point where one species suddenly accelerates beyond all others. Humanity remains plural and precarious. As tens of thousands of years pass, the fossil record grows thin. Not because humans flourish, but because they fade. Climate cycles stack losses faster than adaptation can recover. Each glacial advance erases more than the last. Eventually, the numbers fall too low. A species can survive astonishing hardship, but not indefinitely, not without tools to reshape its circumstances. Without fire, humans are forever reactive, never proactive. They cannot prepare for winters they cannot predict, diseases they cannot treat, environmental changes they cannot influence. At some point, probability turns against them. Maybe it is a supervolcanic winter that plunges temperatures suddenly. Maybe it is a prolonged drought that empties rivers across entire regions. Maybe it is a disease that jumps species and burns through small, connected populations with merciless efficiency. The cause almost doesn't matter. What matters is this: when the margin for error is razor thin, error becomes inevitable. One by one, human species disappear. Not in a single dramatic collapse, but in quiet attrition. Fewer children born, more elders lost. Knowledge thinning, groups shrinking until they are no longer viable. The Earth does not mourn. Predators adjust, ecosystems rebalance. Other species fill the spaces humans once occupied, hardly noticing the transition. And somewhere in deep time, the last humans die, not knowing they are the last, not understanding what their species almost became. There are no witnesses, no monuments, no memory. Just a species that came close, so close to transcending its limits, undone not by a lack of intelligence or courage, but by the absence of a single, fragile discovery. Fire was not inevitable, and without it, humanity was never guaranteed. It was only a possibility, a near miss in the long, indifferent story of life on Earth. And in the end, the planet moves on, unchanged, unconcerned, carrying no trace of the species that almost was. There is no ending in that world. No final chapter written in ash or stone. No ruins half buried beneath time. No signal, anywhere on Earth, that something remarkable once struggled to be born and failed. Just absence. But now return. Return to this world. Our world. Look around you. Every light you see is a descendant of fire. Every screen, every engine, every city glowing against the night sky is a distant echo of a fragile spark that once caught and did not go out. We live so completely inside fire's legacy that it has become invisible to us, like air, like gravity, like time itself. Yet when you strip it away, when you imagine a world where that spark never held, something unsettling emerges. Fire was never just a tool. It was a threshold. The moment humans learned to keep flame alive, something irreversible happened. Night stopped being absolute. Cold stopped being final. Food stopped being merely survival and became fuel for thought. The world stopped being something humans endured and became something they could push against. Fire was the first proof that nature could be negotiated. Everything else followed. The first hearth created the first gathering place. The first gathering place created shared attention. Shared attention created stories. Stories created memory. Memory created identity. Identity created ambition. From that ambition came metallurgy stone giving way to bronze, bronze to iron, iron to steel. From steel came cities. From cities came civilization. From civilization came medicine, science, art, philosophy, and eventually the audacity to ask questions not just about survival, but about meaning. Fire is why humans believe the future can be better than the past. Without it, there is no confidence that tomorrow can be different. Think about how much of your life depends on controlled heat. The food you eat, the water you drink, the warmth that protects you while you sleep, the hospitals that save lives, the data centers that hold human knowledge. Even the electricity powering this video traces its lineage back to combustion. Fire taught us how to turn energy into intention. And perhaps most importantly, fire gave humans time. Time to sit without fear. Time to talk. Time to remember. Time to imagine. Around fire, the mind learned to wander safely, to replay the past and simulate the future, to wonder why stars burn, why death comes, why existence feels like more than accident. Fire did not answer those questions, but it gave us the stillness required to ask them. In the fireless world, humanity never reaches that stillness. Here, we did. And once we did, there was no going back. Fire scaled us up. It compressed centuries of biological evolution into millennia of cultural acceleration. It allowed ideas to outpace genes. It turned fragile apes into planetary architects. But this chapter is not about celebration, because fire also carries a warning. The same force that lifted humanity out of the dark is the force reshaping the planet now. The same mastery over energy that once protected us from extinction now threatens imbalance. We have become so fluent in fire's language that we sometimes forget it is borrowed power. The ghost of that alternate world still haunts us. It whispers a question we rarely ask. What if this had never happened? What if humanity had remained small, cautious, temporary? What if Earth had stayed unconquered, not scarred by roads and borders and smoke, but vast and indifferent? In that world, there is no human tragedy, because there is no human story long enough to become one. The planet thrives. Life continues. Balance holds. But there is no art. No science. No medicine. No music carried across centuries. No voices reaching beyond their own lifetimes. No one looks up at the stars and wonders what they are made of. That is the trade. Fire gave us meaning, but it also gave us responsibility. Because once you learn how to push back the dark, you inherit the obligation to decide how far you should push. The humans who first guarded embers through the night did not know they were igniting everything that followed. They were not inventing civilization. They were trying not to freeze, not to be eaten, not to disappear. They could not know that their fragile flames would echo forward into rockets, microscopes, novels, symphonies, and questions still unanswered. They could not know that without that flame, there might be no one anywhere to remember that humanity ever existed at all. Fire was never guaranteed. It was a narrow victory over chance, fear, and darkness. And every night, when you turn on a light without thinking, when warmth answers your need instantly, when night feels ordinary instead of terrifying, you are living inside that victory. A victory so complete, we forget it ever could have been lost. In another world, the night never ended. In this one, it blinked. Imagine a cold night on the African savanna. The wind cuts through skin like a blade. Predators circle just beyond the reach of your eyes. Darkness is not just absence of light, it is a living force, pressing in, hunting. Now imagine something terrifyingly simple. There is no flame to push it back. No warmth, no cooked food, no sparks of civilization. This is not just a world without fire. This is a world where humanity may never truly begin. And once you step into it, you may never see our world the same way again.